Thank you, Sarah, for starting the recording. Omer, Ahmed, hello, how you doing? Good evening, good
Hi,
afternoon.
Professor.
How you doing?
Oh, good night.
Good night, yes.
It's
Right.
already 7 p.m. here in Kuwait.
Yep.
Professor. How are you doing?
There is some interference there, so maybe, yeah, now it stopped. We'll wait for a few more. It's not even 10 o'clock yet here. 1 minute till. Well, I hope that you are all doing well. It's a beautiful Saturday morning over here in Alabama. I'm glad to see you all. And we're going to get started here so that we don't wait too long. People will pop in as they come. Recording has been started, thanks to Sarah. And yeah, I had a little bit of a cold today, cold symptoms. So if I keep coughing or sneezing, I apologize in advance. But I'll try to get through this without coughing too much. Let me get this started here. Okay, you should be able to see the screen there, or the screen share. Yeah, we're gonna talk about, well, first of all, does anybody have any questions? I noticed there's 16 submissions of the course paper. I've been kind of waiting for that to reach more than half before I start grading. So I'm gonna go and this week, and I'm gonna start grading them. And also, if anybody has submitted late submissions for the quiz, and then we'll do a quiz next week, because now most people have done their course paper, and then we'll start preparing for the case study, because we have several weeks left still in the class. So yeah, thank you for those who have submitted that. It's good to get that out of the way so that you don't have too many things going on same time, especially as we are getting towards holiday season. Next week is, of course, Thanksgiving week over here, but since you are pretty much all international folks. You don't necessarily celebrate Thanksgiving. We're going to go ahead and have the class on Thanksgiving regardless. But yeah, if somebody is celebrating Thanksgiving and is visiting with family, then recording will be available, for you for that. Today we'll talk about pay, compensation. That's obviously, well, every chapter is important, right? So I mean, every time I start and say, well, this is an important topic. Well, every topic is important. Human resource management, it is difficult to squeeze everything into one course. Really, I mean, like if you would get a master's in human resource management rather than an MBA, because there's a difference, obviously. I have master's in human resource management, and in my curriculum, every one of these topics was its own course. So we would have compensation planning, compensation management course all by itself. And here we can only talk about it 2 hours, but these are all a lot more detailed and lot more in-depth topics when you really start exploring them. So we do kind of explore them in a somewhat surface level, here, but the purpose of this course is not to turn you into HR directors and HR professionals. Purpose of this is more getting you to having a general understanding on HR so that you are able to function and as a manager and work with HR professionals. So this will be giving you an overview of some of the basic factors determining pay rates. I mean, organizations don't pay people randomly. There is logic behind why people get paid what they are getting paid, and we'll talk about that. Now, granted, some of that logic works better than other, so depending on what system is being used, it may be better or worse. We'll talk about how to conduct job evaluation, and surprise, surprise, everything again originates from job analysis. If you do not do a job analysis and have a job description and job specifications, then you cannot do job evaluation either. You can't determine how much something is worth before you have defined what it is. So that's kind of the logic. We'll talk about market competitive pay plans, how to attract employees by having good compensation structure. We'll talk about how to price managerial and professorial jobs, how to explain the differences between competency-based and traditional pay plans. In the last decade or so, competency-based plans have become real sort of popular, where everything is pay for performance, pay for competencies, rather than just some other traditional system, as we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So we'll talk about total rewards, improving employee engagement. We'll differentiate between direct compensation and indirect compensation, and then how total rewards is sort of the umbrella terms for that, or term for that. So as I just said, employee compensation has two components to it. The first component is that direct compensation, which includes direct financial payments, wages, salaries, incentives, commissions, and bonuses. So everything that is monetary is considered direct compensation. So every kind of like bonus, incentives, if they are given in financial form of money, then they are direct. Now there are some incentives that are non-monetary. Now they do have monetary value, but they are not actual money. So in that case, incentives, not bonuses. Bonuses, it typically just is, well, I can't think of a scenario where a bonus would not be money. But there is some other incentives that could be financial or could be non-financial. Indirect financial payments are employer-paid insurance, health insurance, vacation, PTO, paid time off, a lot of different kinds of benefits. Company-provided housing, company-provided car, company-provide daycare. I mean, there's lots of different examples of company provided food. Google, for example, they have free food, in a Googleplex, so people can, they have cafeterias and all of that. So that's all examples of indirect compensation, because those are not monetary, but they have monetary value, but they are not direct money. Now, in some countries, there's a bigger part of the compensation is indirect than direct. Now, United States, the tradition is that most of the compensation is direct. So about 70% is direct and 30% is indirect, in terms of insurance, in terms of workers' compensation, and there's a lot of those types of things that are being, so whatever the employee gets salary, the employer actually pays 30% more. Some European countries, it can be bigger difference. I mean, between, more like almost 50-50, so that the indirect compensation can be a larger percentage. And the reason for that in many places is that because taxation is higher, so indirect compensation doesn't have to be taxed. So perks like company provided housing and car and those kind of things, they are beneficial in a country where taxation is very high. And so companies employees really benefit from that in that way. And so and maybe there's some cultural, factors why that is the case, that some countries provide more indirect than direct. So they are aligned reward strategy, is really a term that is, compensation strategy, you could also call it. It's really planning and designing pay rates, mean salary scale. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, pay rates. So there's a salary scale, there's different ways of coming up with the scale. So yes, absolutely. And so aligned reward strategy or compensation strategy means how do you come up with the total reward package, total compensation package, a perfect mix of direct and indirect compensation to produce the kind of employee behaviors that the organization needs to achieve their competitive strategy. So not only produce as kind of behaviors, meaning good performance, good productivity, but also attracts the right kinds of employees. Goes without saying that people don't want to work for companies that don't pay good salaries. But then again, salary isn't the only reason why people work. It's many people say it's the fifth reason why people work. So it's a reason, but it's not solely about that. Location matters a lot. The kind of people you work with, the kind of work that you do, those are also factors. But obviously, money is important. So there is this theory of equity theory. I may have mentioned this briefly before. I mean, there are a lot of motivation theories, right? They are called needs theories, and they are originated from Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You may have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, it's important to realize that Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been proven invalid about 100 years ago. So it's really not a valid theory anymore in terms of the pyramid shape of it and everything being progressive, that you have to satisfy lower need in order to achieve the higher need. And really, when you think about, if it would be that way, then think about like Buddhist monks who have no possessions, no ownership of anything, so how would they reach enlightenment, if they would have to reach the other needs before that. So easily you can understand why the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is not really the way it works. But reason we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs is because we recognize that motivation is separated into lower level needs and higher level needs. And so that separation is correct or is supported by research. And as a result of that, all of the newer motivation theories like McClelland's theory or Hirschberg's theory, two-factor theory, all of those are originated from Maslow's thinking. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs has heuristic value. So equity theory of motivation is one motivation theory, but it's a little bit different to the needs theories that are based on Maslow. And basically, equity theory means that every one of us, we compare our input and output ratio. So when you go to work and you look at the amount of work that you put in and the amount of reward, amount of compensation that you get back from it, you are comparing that to somebody else. And if you feel like your ratio, your input output ratio, is not as good as somebody else's, then you experience what is called negative equity. Now, if you have a better ratio than somebody else, you experience positive inequity. Now, interestingly, both negative and positive inequity are demotivating. Even if you get the better end of the stick, so to speak, you still feel like it demotivates you because you understand that your organization is not fair, even though you benefit from it out of somebody else. So obviously, negative inequity is even worse. So what happens that when person perceives inequity, what will happen is that they obviously they get stressed out, they experience tension, and they typically solve that tension and that inequity by leaving the organization. According to research, inequities cause person eventually to leave. We human beings do not like to live in an inequity situation very long. It just kind of carves us. There's external equity, there's internal, individual, procedural. So you can perceive the inequity in a lot of different ways. If the organizational policies are unfair, that's procedural. Individual inequities, if people are being, discriminated against based on some internal qualities, internal, external. There's some inequities that are, like I just said, somebody else is getting treated in inequitable ways versus somebody, like yourself being. So there's those differences. External equity really refers to how jobs pay rate in one company compares to the job rate in other companies. So, it's when you look at the company that you work in, and if you get into this realization that you are working for a company that pays way less than somebody else, well, eventually you're going to turn around and you're going to try to work for that other company. Internal equity means to job rate within the company, so in the same company. So that's why external other companies, internal within your company. So those are different kinds of forms of inequity. There are some laws, like, with everything, of course, and you note how old these are: 31, 36, 64. Now, like Davis-Bacon Act, the Secretary of Labor set wage rates for laborers and mechanics employed by contractors working for the federal government. So that's really not significant to anybody other than those working for federal government. And the Walsh-Healy Public Contract Act sets basic labor standards for employees working on any government contract that amounts to more than 10,000. So again, that's only applies to federal. So Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act makes it unlawful for employers to discriminate against any individual, with respect to hiring, compensation, terms, conditions, privileges, of course, because of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. So we've talked about that already. Civil Rights Act, very important in historically speaking. Obviously, we still do not live in an equal world, and so there's still a lot more work to be done. But Civil Rights Act really did change things to better quite significantly. But yeah, there's still a lot to be improved, for sure. So there's other laws out there as well. Fair Labor Standards Act, 1938 originally, and it's been amended many times since then. So typical kind of things in the FLSA as we call it, short FLSA, is minimum wage is being set through amendments to FLSA, maximum hours, overtime pay, equal pay, record keeping, child labor provisions. So child labor is very, very important, of course, and United States child labor is illegal, and in some countries, obviously, the laws are looser in this regard, and there's a lot of controversy about it because sometimes U.S. companies, they go to Bangladesh or a lot of Philippines, India has been used a lot, many different parts of the world to look for cheap labor. And sometimes they are children working in those organizations. So the question is, how do the laws apply? If you companies are originated in the United States, how can you go to other country and violate your own country's laws? Well, when in Rome, right? So the idea is that, well, we are in that country's jurisdiction, so we get to apply that country's laws. And a lot of people feel like that's a wrong way of looking at it, that we should follow our own laws. So in terms of child labor, US companies do typically tend to follow their own laws. But obviously, when it comes to like minimum wage, the whole point of outsourcing and setting up factories in Bangladesh, for garment factories, because almost all clothing items are manufactured in Bangladesh. The whole point of going there is cheap labor. So if we turn around and start paying minimum wages that are set in the United States, in Bangladesh, there would be no point of going to Bangladesh. Also, as it many times would seem like, oh, that would be great if US companies would pay better. And that would also be detrimental to the economy of that country, because if they would pay significantly better than the local companies, they would dictate, unfair advantage, and everybody would only want to work for the US companies, and that would put the local companies out of business. So it's not really that simple that US companies should pay more. There would be a lot of negative consequences if they actually would, ironically, if you understand what I'm saying. So these economic issues are very complicated, but law gets involved in those. Now, exempt and non-exempt is very important. And by the way, there's some amendments being proposed in Congress right now that can very, very significantly change this issue in terms of exempt and non-exempt. Because if you are exempt, that means that you're exempt from overtime pay, which means that you're salaried. Non-exempt, are people who are not exempt from overtime pay and they're hourly. And in order for somebody to be salaried, they have to qualify for certain criteria, like administrative exemption, teacher exemption, like teachers are exempted, they're salaried, they're not hourly, and employees, staff members, they have to have a certain amount of administrative responsibilities over secretarial, to be exempt. Now, those guidelines are being examined because a lot of companies are taking advantage of people in putting them in salaries, and then having them work extra hours and not paying them overtime, because really, when you start paying people, the boundary for the money that you have to pay and a minimum salary to be exempt, sometimes gets really, really close to what it would be if you are paying hourly. And so at that point, if you are paying hourly and you're almost bumping to that 35,000, whatever that limit is, and then you pay overtime, it goes over it. Well, in those situations, the employer can say, well, it doesn't make sense for me to pay overtime. I'm going to put them in salary, then I can only pay that one salary, and exempted employees are expected to pay, work overtime when needed, and they don't get that overtime pay in return of the fact that they get salary. So that is being exploited quite a bit. So those rules are about to change, and that's gonna make a big difference in many organizations because it's gonna force many organizations to pay overtime for more people. On the other side of it, for people who are salaried, don't want to have a time card, clock in, clock out, I mean, and so, if you have to turn people, exempt people into non-exempt, they would many times have a problem with the fact that their time is being tracked, because exempt, you don't have to count hours. In non-exempt, you have to count hours. So that's a complicated issue. Inequity and a minimal wage. Certainly, minimal wage creates huge inequities. And that's why, like McDonald's, in many states now they pay $15. In some places, like here in Alabama, they still pay like $11 or something. But really livable wage in the United States these days, one could argue that you can't really survive without $15 an hour. And so by government setting the minimum wage, it gives organizations sort of permission to pay that minimum wage. And if the minimum wage is too low, people can't survive with that in many places, many states. And so, California has a lot of homeless people these days because there still are a lot of hospitality, fast food restaurants, cleaning companies. A lot of jobs that pay minimal wages or just slightly above minimum wage. And in California, even $15 an hour would not be a livable wage. It's just so expensive to find housing there that it would not be possible to survive with that amount of money. So, that creates humongous inequities. If people are stuck in minimum wage jobs, they are stuck in poverty, as long as government allows corporations to pay that little. But then, this is a capitalist country, although there's no country that is fully capitalist. But according to, capitalist idea, government should have no say so in these things in the first place. So, that's a political issue, but it creates inequities. Equal Pay Act 1963 is it's an amendment to the FLSA, as I talked about earlier, and it's really about gender or sex, as they officially call it. States that employees of one sex cannot be paid wages at lower rate than paid to employees of opposite sex. In other words, women have to be paid the same amount than men. Now, are they paid same amount? No. There still is a difference. Women are probably paid 75 cents for every dollar that men are being paid. But it's kind of it's not necessarily side-by-side jobs, exactly same job. It's just that women are not given promotions, as readily as men. And so the difference is created by ability to advance and all those sort of things. So although there is an Equal Pay Act out there, companies find ways to promote men over women. Unfortunately, it's changing little by little. It's little by little, and there is. I don't know. I don't think I told you. If I told you already, I apologize for repeating this. But I wrote an article once, about women being better managers than men because of corpus callosum, two hemispheres of the brain. There's an organ called corpus callosum that it starts developing in the first trimester in a female embryo, and a third trimester in a male embryo. And as a result of that, women have larger corpus callosums, which means that women have an ability to, use both hemispheres of the brain better than men. Now, we only use about 10% of our brain capacity, so which side of the brain we use it, may not be that significant. But if we believe, and most brain scientists believe, that there is some localization of some functions and activities in different parts of the brain, and an ability to, use both sides of the brains, coordinate them better, may give women certain advantage in terms of people management and relational thinking and critical thinking in some sense. Now, that was not very welcomed. It was 1991 when I wrote that article. Back in 1991, people did not want to hear it. Men did not want to hear any idea that women would be better managers. And so my article was, it was posted in the Colorado Springs Business Journal, and they, in addition to printing it, they posted it online, and there was some blog that had picked up my article, and they were really challenging it. And some points were fair, and some points were ridiculous. And it was an organization called Don Juan Society. It was a bunch of, chauvinist, masculine men posting tips of how to pick up women and those kinds of things. And so this was a silly society who didn't like what I had said. And because of my name, Tomi, is obviously sounds like a female name, they called me, and excuse me my language, feminine bitch in that blog. And so I had to reply and say, it's a Mr. Feminine bitch to you, dude. And after that reply, nobody answered to that blog anymore. So the point of my discussion, again, apologizing my language, but I had to tell you the true story, was that they could not accept the fact that it would be another man suggesting that women could be better managers. They automatically assumed that I had to be some feminist woman, self-promoting and trying to say as women are better than men. And so now, since 1991, it's been a long time, and these days there's a lot more acceptance of the fact that women are equal. I believe in equality between men and women. Finland, where I'm from, is one of the most equal countries in the world, and so I was born and raised that way. So I consider myself a feminist in that regard. So Equal Pay Act is important, but a lot of work remains in there as well. Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, it talks about people's vesting and portability rights. That vesting refers to equity or ownership of the employees built up and in their person plans should the employer terminate before retirement. So vesting has to do with whatever money you put into your retirement plan. It's yours when it's vested, and your company cannot turn around and take it away. And so that's what vesting means. Now, typically companies do not take it away even before it's officially vested, but theoretically they could take that money back in the company managed retirement plan. Now, usually vesting, is a couple of years, 2 years, 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, maybe 6 years max, depending on companies' selection of the 401k or 302b, which is for nonprofits. And so there are different kinds of retirement accounts where people put their money, and of course, they are put in a stock market. So, that makes 80 or some percent or more of American stockholders, because the retirement is tied to stock market, which is, some people may not want to care about stock market, but look, if your retirement is tied to it, you should care about it. Portability is another thing, is that, if you leave a company, you can take your retirement savings and you can transfer that to another retirement plan without any sort of tax benefits and so forth. So, and fiduciary standards really, refers to preventing dishonestly in pension plan funding. We could talk about Jimmy Hoffa and what Jimmy Hoffa did with mafia and retirement plans and everything back in the day. There was some dishonesty involved, and as a result of that, Jimmy Hoffa disappeared, and nobody knows where Jimmy Hoffa went. So that's kind of where those things originated from, where there were some illegal investments and issues that were going on. So Workday. If you are familiar with Workday, it used to be 9 to 5, right, or 8 to 5 with the hour break between or whatever. Now these days, I don't have an exact percentage, but it's surprisingly low. Less than 50% of jobs are 9 to 5 these days. And really, when you think about it, it makes no sense at all. It makes no sense that everybody gets on that highway at the same time and drives to work at the same time for the same exact workday. Now, certainly, it does make sense, in sort of some business to be able to be done when people are open, companies are open at the same time. So, it's somewhat understandable. But like stock market is 24/7 these days. It's open 24/7 all around in the world. So there's really no earthly reason to be having a 9 to 5 job. My job, being in academia is not a 9 to 5 job. Here I am Saturday talking to you. So many, many jobs, especially when people are working more remotely, people work when they feel like working, or they, schedule their own days accordingly. I mean, I work 12 hours a day, but I take breaks here where I, and do things, that I have to do, and then I go back. And so it's not like I work 12 hours straight up. I just choose my own hours, and I probably put way more than 40 hours a week, but I just don't count the hours. I just get the job done, and I just get it done when I'm able to schedule it. So more and more jobs are that way. So this idea of a work day isn't really the same kind of a thing that it used to be back in the day. But and also it's kind of interesting because if a person is late every day, let's just say that you have to show up to work 8 o'clock, and the person who shows up 8:10 or 8:15, now the employer could go ahead and punish that person for being 15 minutes late, but in reality, that person starts working right away, and they start getting busy right away, and they make up for that 15 minutes that they're late. A person who shows up 15 minutes or 20 minutes early, may look like it's a person who works more because they came 15 minutes late, but they spend 20 minutes sitting and drinking coffee. So the research has shown that just because people show up to the workplace early doesn't mean that they start working early. It just means that they use that time to enjoy, and just kind of, they like that kind of relaxation before they start working, and they sip their coffee and whatever. Then they say, okay, well, it's, 8:10, so I guess I have to get to work. And they slowly then started, getting to work. So in reality, tardiness is not really an issue at all. So that's an issue of something that needs to be looked at in the future. What does workday look like, and what does it consist? How many hours, and this and that. Also, there've been research, and I don't remember right now to quote the exact research. But there's been research being studied. The 40 hours a week. What is the difference between 4 days, 10 hours a day versus 5 days, 8 hours a day? Which one is a more productive combination? And interestingly, the research found no significant difference between 4 days, 10 hours a day and 5 days, 8 hours a day. Instead, the higher productivity occurred on 4 hours, 8 hours a day. I mean, 4 days, 8 hours a day. In other words, working less hours, people produced more. And many of us know that, hours and productivity are not aligned. People work faster, and so what they found is that when people were allowed to have shorter work weeks, they got more done because they focused more, concentrated more, and they felt more rested over the weekend. So it actually benefited the organization. But because of union rules and because a lot of different things that never got changed. Now, independent contractor is another kind of a thing that is being abused a lot in today's kind of world. That means that you do not put somebody in a payroll. They're not your employees. They are independent contractors. They are agents. They have their own business. They are vendors to you. And by doing that, you don't have to provide them equipment. So, you don't have to provide them company computer. In a matter of fact, you cannot do that and still call somebody independent contractor. Independent contractors, they will provide their own tools, their own equipment, all of that stuff. And they are also not receiving any benefits. no health benefits, no insurance, no anything like that, because they are independent contractors. And so many companies, to avoid paying benefits that 30% more, indirect compensation, they hire people as independent contractors and not employees. And that creates what is called gig economy. Everybody's their own employer or self-employed independent contractors providing services to other companies and other individuals. Now, the problem is that those independent contractors ramped up the prices of everything because they now have to turn around and go buy their own medical insurance and whatever. So the kind of work that they do as independent contractors, they have to charge a lot more because they have to, pay all of those services for themselves. They insurance for covering they work liability, and they insure health insurance and all of those. And because they are small companies, they can get sort of the group rate, so they pay higher premiums, and so they have to now increase prices. So as a result of it, a lot of laborers, plumbers, contractors, electricians charge almost $100 an hour these days, and in some places more. And that's pretty, when you think about it, $100 an hour, somebody who's a laborer, and then you have somebody with the doctorate degree not getting even close to that hourly in terms of their salaries. It's an uneven society right now because of those independent contractor abuse situations and so forth. And not always abuse, it's just the way society goes. People start their own businesses and they charge more, and they create a market price for it. There's also National Labor Relations Act, has to do with the unions and giving unions the right to collectively bargain. So Wagner Act granted employees right to unionize and bargain collectively, and Wagner Act then created the National Labor Relations Board that is overseeing employer practices and ensuring, making sure that employees receive their rights. So that would be another course that would be its own course in human resource management program called labor relations, where you would go, unions and their history and all of that stuff. Is very fascinating. There's a long history of unionization in the United States and of course around the world. And some countries like Germany, unions have enormous power and importance, and all salaries are tied to union rates. Now, United States, we are not quite at that level. Finland is very unionized. In a matter of fact, interesting fact, back in a civil rights movement when Ku Klux Klan was obviously after African Americans in Minnesota and Midwest states, KKK, Ku Klux Klan, was also hunting, going after Finns like myself. I mean, first generation immigrants in Finland. Of course, I wasn't, here back in those days, but my fellow Finns who came before me were basically hunted by Ku Klux Klan because of the pro-union mindset. As Scandinavians have always had very pro-union mindset, and they were almost perceived to be communists in the eyes of far right people, and Ku Klux Klan was an example of that kind of group. So KKK wasn't just about race; it was also political ideation and very, very similar to some of the extreme right-wing groups in United States, even presently, especially since Trump administration. So, there are some extreme ideologies related to unionization, and some people see unions as being a communist type of a thing, which actually is very silly because it's very contrary to that. Communism would be government controlling everything. So how is then employees collectively getting together and bargaining against the employer? How would that be a communist thing? Because it's a very opposite of for government controlling them. So anyway, it's a little silly, but that's the way it is. Pay policy. So pay policies obviously have to. Every company have to choose their pay policy, their own compensation strategy. and that will manifest itself in pay policies. Geography, of course, plays a big part of that. We California, you have to get paid a lot more than here in Alabama. I looked at one point moving to Boston, and I noticed that I would have to make 55% more money in Boston than I make over here to be able to afford similar kind of house, similar kind of everything over here than I would, be able to afford in Boston, and similar kind of thing. In a matter of fact, I once considered moving to San Francisco, and it was more like 75, 80% more that I would have had to like 75% more that I would have to make in San Francisco to have equal same standard of living that here in Alabama. So, I didn't move because it's inexpensive to live over here, relatively speaking, but salaries are also lower. In other words, the same salary that I'm being paid over here, I could not survive in Boston or California, but people doing my kind of a job in California and Boston would be getting paid, 50% to 70% more than I'm being paid here. So companies have to think about that. Now, this becomes an interesting issue when people work remotely. Now, if you are a California company and you are paying California wages and you hire people remotely, you hire somebody from Alabama, well, are you going to pay that person California wages in Alabama? And companies are pretty quickly realizing that, and Google, Apple, a lot of these big corporations who are now allowing some people, well, Apple not so much because Apple doesn't believe in that, but Google is saying, if you want to work remotely, you have to adjust your salary based on where you live. And we're not going to pay you California wages if you're not living in California. So that's kind of an interesting, kind of a movement as well. Wegmans Wood Markets is interesting comparison to like Walmart, who really, Walmart really, they drive cost and prices down because they try to sell everything the cheapest possible, which also mean that they can't pay their people very much, because if you are selling stuff cheaper, then, you have to hire people cheaper. So Walmart actually, is a reason why minimum wages are not going up and they are keeping wages down. Walmart is one of the biggest employers in the country, and they are really, really, controversial because they don't pay people well at all. In a matter of fact, they have a department, that helps people to apply welfare benefits, which, think about it, you pay people very little money, and then you pay some other people in your company to help your employees to get welfare benefits from the government because you don't want to pay them well. So that's Walmart. So Wegmans takes a very different approach. It views its workforce as an integral part of achieving strategic aims of optimizing service while controlling cost by improving systems and productivity. So they really believe in a really, really, really good customer service, and because they offer above market pay rates, affordable health insurance, and a full range of employee benefits, they are able to hire better quality, better performing people, and as a result of that, they are much more profitable because they get the best people. Walmart doesn't get the best people because they are not, paying as well. So if you you want to learn more about it, you can read this in a book. But if Wegmans is an example of a company that does so well, why do you think more companies are not doing it? What do you think, guys? Why do you think more companies wouldn't pay well like Wegmans if they are so profitable as compared to Walmart? What do you think? Anybody? Well,
Sorry, tell me, Tommy, what was the question again?
so if Wegman is an example, is as opposed to Walmart, that they have been able to have much better profitability than Walmart by paying people better than Walmart. So if there's an example like company like Wegman, why would not other organizations, other firms, companies also then, paying people more so that they could have better quality employees and be more profitable? Why do so many companies choose to go the Walmart way, which is pay people very little and have poor profitability? So why do you think that companies refuse
Cheap
to pay?
management. That's the exact word. They have some cheap managers.
Yeah, actually it is. It's an organizational culture. It's a lack of, yes, cheap managers and poor management. It's a lack of courage. It's a lack of courage, a lack of good management, and that's really the reason. They are not able to turn their culture around to manage performance because they have exactly what you say, cheap managers, and that's exactly the reason. Because how can you pay employers more money? Then you have to pay managers more money. You have to have quality managers who can actually, track the performance of people who are, being paid more money. So it's an entire management organizational culture issue. And something like Walmart, the policy-driven, highly controlling, highly mechanistic organization, they're not able to switch to that organic management style and that kind of more progressive, more innovative, creative type of a thing. And so many companies are stuck in Walmart ways and they're not able to change. So you're absolutely right. Very good answer.
And I have one more note here, Tommy.
Yep.
In my observation and some of the global organizations,
Mhm.
so they waste way more money in some unnecessary stuff instead of investing in increasing or making the wages better for their employees.
Mhm.
And I know some organizations also will stick to the minimum wage because they don't want to pay more for their employees,
Mhm.
and they will waste millions of dollars in unnecessary stuff. And I have many examples. I cannot disclose what I mean here in my organization, but this is a fact. There's
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting that so Walmart as an example, I think currently 4 or 5 of the 10 richest people in the United States are Waltons, from Walmart family. So they obviously, people who own Walmart and started Walmart are mega billionaires, and they have become super rich for paying very little and basically discriminating people. They've been caught with hiring illegal workers, paying women less than men, all kinds of different things historically. So you're right. Somebody's making big money, out of taking advantage of those people. And interestingly, many of those companies, those executives get outrageous bonuses and, luxury gifts and, trips to Bahamas and, things like that, as a reward of them being able to, keep the cost down below them. So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's many of these companies who have that kind of way of thinking. The fact that those managers are poor managers means that they also are wasteful managers and they spend money on stupid things. Sorry for my language, but you know what I mean. Um, waste money a lot in expense of the employees. So yeah, absolutely, you're right. Um, it's a complicated, picture. Now, other complicated issue, is compensating expatriates. So, if you're an expatriate and you work in a foreign country, you obviously have to, in many instances, handle housing, transportation, and provide for those kinds of things. Because, like when I lived in South Korea, I was in a South Korean community. Foreigner cannot rent an apartment. Foreigner cannot open a bank account. So there were certain things that was difficult for me to do, and my employer, University of Maryland, took care of some of those things on my behalf, and obviously, that was reflected on my pay because they covered some of those expenses for me, and so um, many times you have to pay more to expatriates because they have to pay more for certain things in that country because they are, foreigners. And also, interesting thing about compensating expatriates is that, you often pay for the relocation, the moving expenses for the whole family. You have to often pay for private schools for children. You have to often, take into account that when you are moving the expat out there, their wife or spouse, husband or wife, whoever is the not working person, they can't work because they don't have a work permit in that country. So you have to account for all of those kinds of factors, in pay. And many times, if it's a temporary assignment, so if my company wanted to send me to some other country, well, I would have to pay rent there, but I would not sell my house in US. So I would be able to, return. So sometimes you have to also account for the fact that there's mortgage payment and a rent payment. So many times expats get paid a lot more money. That doesn't mean that they pocket it more. It's just that they have higher expenses. And so expatriate management is complicated because expats don't stay very long. And interestingly, after 1 year of expatriate working in a foreign country, the biggest factor of whether or not they stay in that foreign country is their spouse. And so organizations have to make sure that the spouses are happy and satisfied there as well, because if the spouse says, look, this is not working for me, we need to go back home, well, the executive, the expatriate is going to go home. So that's very, very interesting, compensation-wise, kind of interesting thing as well. This would be a good time for a break. And so right after break, we'll talk about job evaluation methods, the pay scales and those kinds of things, and how to do job evaluation. So yeah, it's just a most natural, normal spot to take a break. So it's 10:54 over here. Let's come back like 11 minutes after, or 9 minutes after, or whatever. Whatever time it is there. So 11:10 over here, whatever it's 10 after, 11 after, something. Let's just say 10 after. So we'll see you then. Okay, everybody back. Whoever is not back, please raise your arm.
I'm here.
Again, the same trick, Tomi.
I know. I can't even see you because you don't have cameras on. So, I wouldn't even be able to tell you if you are raising your arms.
I'm not here.
Yeah, mentally, right? Physically, maybe. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's continue then. And by the way, interrupt me anytime if you have questions. So it doesn't have to be just me talking. And so yeah, job evaluation, like I think I said earlier, it's what we call the process of figuring out what a job is worth. I mean, every job is worth different amount, and that's the amount that we pay somebody to do that job. And the way we evaluate that is, of course, we conduct job analysis, and then based on their job specifications and all the different components of a job analysis that we get, that we use to, first of all, write the job description, requirements for the job, and then job specifications with the skills and abilities required to perform that job. Those give us information to be able to determine what the job is worth. And so we are able to come up with the different salary structure and hierarchy based on that. Now, of course, there's always a market-based need, so there's one approach to do this is to just look at the market and saying, you could do a formal or informal salary survey to determine what other companies are paying in that relevant job market and then kind of pay the same. And that works well if you are, restaurant and you are hiring hosts and waitresses and cooks, chefs, whatever. and that those are exactly the kind of jobs that would be in other restaurant. So they are, easily interchangeable. And so you can just say, okay, we'll pay the same than there, or we pay better to convince somebody to work for us rather than somebody else. So that's relatively easy. But it's not always that easy because some jobs don't exist in other places. So you have to figure it out yourself. And you can't be always chasing the market either. So of course, the market always have to play part in it, but you have to have internal equity and also external equity, which is, like we talked about earlier, you have to be able to match the market so that you're not paying less than everybody else. You can pay less, but if you pay less, then you have to have some other reasons why people would work for you other than salary. Maybe location is better. Maybe, again, the organizational culture may be better. Maybe the work hours are better. I mean, all of that can be factor. Or you can pay more than everybody else, and then you get away with not needing to have maybe all of those other indirect factors and culture and work time and all of that, because you're already paying more than everybody else, and so people choose to work for you because of that. So there are different strategies that you can follow to make sure that you remain competitive. But obviously, it has a lot to do with competitiveness. Being able to attract the right kind of employees and to keep them. Yeah, and so compensation has a big part of that. So there are certain compensable factors, certain factors that you elements of a job, fundamental compensable elements of a job, skill, effort, responsibility, or working conditions that you determine as factors that you use as criteria to determine somebody's pay. By working conditions, you pay somebody more for dangerous, hard working conditions than somebody to sit in a cozy office, for example. And so you use these compensable factors as a way of establishing how jobs compare to one another. And there are different kind of ways to go about doing that. But when you start doing job evaluation, you start it by identifying the need. And you're like, okay, we don't know how we're paying consistently to people. We have to have a need for it. You get employees' compensation for it. Understand that employees are willing to give information, in a job analysis process, that they are able to identify those compensable factors with you and being open up and honest about it. And then you choose an evaluation committee, and then you perform the evaluation. Now, you can't necessarily evaluate every single job, so you use benchmark jobs. You choose certain key positions, just benchmarks, and then you kind of fill up the gap in between. So otherwise, it would be kind of too much work. So ranking would be one way to do it. You obtain job information, you select and group jobs into different kind of categories. Like I said, restaurant would be a good example. Hosts, hostesses, waitresses, chefs, restaurant managers would be groups. And if you own in like a large restaurant chain, then you have those groupings and you rank them as a restaurant managers get paid most, chefs or cooks get paid second, and then waitresses and hosts. So you have a ranking like that, and then you combine ratings, and then you compare current pay with what others are paying based on salary surveys, in each of those categories. So groups and that you ranked, and then you assign them salaries within that, and then you assign a new pay scale. So it sounds relatively simple. It kind of looks a little bit like this, ranking order, office manager, chief nurse, bookkeeper. So it's Jackson Hospital. So this is a hospital situation. So you, again, like as I said, with the restaurant, similar kind of idea. Office manager gets paid the most, chief nurse, bookkeeper, nurse, cook, nurse aide, orderly. So you use those job compensable factors, to determine which job has the most of those compensable factors. skill level, working conditions, education could be one, and you rank them based on that. It's a very kind of rough kind of a way, and sometimes the ranking doesn't become so easy. So you have to do a point system. We'll talk about that in a few. In point system where you assign certain number of points to compensable factors, and when you evaluate those positions, you assign them points, and whatever job gets the most points gets certain dollar amount. And by the way, using points rather than purely dollar amounts, like in this example, is better, because what happens with the evaluation scale like this, pay scale like this, that doesn't use points, is that you are constantly needing to be changing the salaries, all of the whole scale. When salaries go up, then you have to change everything. Point scale, because then you take the points and you convert them into dollars based on whatever situation. It's better to easier to apply in situations that would have branches in multiple locations, for example, and because of the geography, one place would pay more than another. If it's a point system, it applies to all of them. You just add a premium. So point system would be a more sophisticated way, one step up of doing job ranking. But ranking is the most fundamental, most basic kind of way. You benchmark, and then if you have office manager and you have, say, assistant office manager, associate office manager, senior office manager, then you are able to create positions around that are, maybe 500,000, whatever different from here, depending on the kind of rank within a group, so to speak. And so, you would have your annual pay scale, then you compare to others, external comparison, and then you come up with the final pay based on that comparison. You adjust it based on your salary survey. So this would be a very sort of a basic and rough example. Now, job classification is a very, very typical way that military, federal government, municipalities, state organizations, public organizations, they do pay scales very much by having a job classification. So they have certain grade. It's a different variation of a ranking in certain sense. They issue certain grade and certain classification for jobs, and then huge amount of jobs, fall under that, certain category. So GS stands for general schedule. It's a government grade, pay grade that is used, for civilian, non-military government employees. So that's why, by the way, when somebody says this is above my pay grade, well, that's where the word grade comes from. Some corporations use pay grade, but that's very clunky for corporations. It's more typical for public government organizations. And so, for an example, when I was working for University of Maryland, I was classified according to the military system. So I was what is called GS-12. So same thing here, general schedule. My pay grade was 12, which is, although I was GS-12, it would be equal to enlisted officer, or O, officer 12. In a military rankings, it would be a major, rank of a major. And in GS-12, exactly same ranking that I had, that would be military-wise major, would be special agent in FBI, would be GS-12 or GS-11 or GS-12. So my pay grade was the same as special agent in FBI, for example, or a major in military. So what I mean by example is that lots of different job categories. Obviously, my responsibilities were very different than a major's responsibilities in a military, any branch of military, and that would be very difficult, very totally different than what somebody special agent in FBI would be doing. So although we technically all had GS-12 level pay, and it was considered an officer ranking, or, even civilians with GS-12 going to a military base would have access to officer club, for example. So they have some same privileges, some same allowances, some same pay basically, but their responsibilities under that grade would be very, very, very different. And so that's how grade is. You establish a grade and then you give a very, very broad, wide definition, like perform specialized duties in a defined functional or program area involving wide variety of problems or situations, develops information, identifies into relationships, and takes actions consistent with objectives of the function or program served. Now, when you read that sentence, what does that mean, or that paragraph? It's like it can apply to almost anything. Level of responsibility, work is assigned in terms of objectives, priorities, and deadlines. The employee works independently in resolving most conflicts. Completed work is evaluated for conformance to policy guidelines, such as regulations, precedent cases, and policy statements require considerable interpretation and adaptation. Again, very difficult to understand. When you really think about it, what does it say? It doesn't really say anything. It establishes certain level of responsibility that is consistent with that grade, but a lot of different jobs can be put under that. So that's typical for government to be doing. So yes, they establish pay scale based on grades. You can establish pay scales based on ratings, and you can make those ratings more sophisticated. In this slide, the point method, which when you take the ratings and you assign points, and number of consequential factors are identified with the degree to which of each of those factors is present on the job, and it's determined based on that. So, whatever points, education, you gave 10 points for bachelor's, 20 points for master's, 30 points for doctorate, for example. Years of service, 5 years or more, less, 10 points, 20 points, 30 points, whatever, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. Technology usage, how many types of technology is required to be using, you give points based on that. A lot of different things, dangerous work environment, regular safe office would be certain, outdoors, more difficult conditions, extreme dangerous situations, you give more points. So those would be all compensable factors that you simply assign points, and you can make this computerized, because you can now program a computer to identify even job description. You load the job description, computer recognizes certain words and uses those words as pattern recognition to assign points automatically, based on the categories and the rankings that you've established, or point values that you program the computer to give. So point system is very stable. It doesn't have to be changed a lot. You can change the dollar amounts, but you don't have to change the system, and you can make it automated. So point system is probably the best, most sophisticated kind of way of doing it. If you want to do it kind of the traditional, old school kind of compensation management. But the problem is that it doesn't always work that way. Universities, for example, where I worked my entire career, I've always worked in a business school side, and business school professors get typically paid more than professors in like English professors or philosophy professors. And the reason for that is that those business professors have job opportunities outside of teaching, which English teachers or philosophers don't quite have. So there's more competition for them, because they can go to work for a corporation and get paid a lot more. So because of the demand, the pay has to be adjusted market value wise like that. So it is very important to create a market competitive pay plan, which you do that by choosing correct benchmark jobs. Now, the good way of going about doing that is to use, Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics would be a good place where you can find job descriptions that specify job specifications and specify how much roughly those are getting paid in an average in the United States. So you're able to benchmark using research from Department of Labor Statistics, or you can use ONET. ONET is also a government site, ONET online, and it does the same thing. You can find job descriptions. You can find a lot of good things from ONET that helps you with the benchmarking. So you benchmark, and based on benchmark, you select compensable factors, and then you assign weights to those compensable factors, and you convert those percentages into points for each factor. So that's an other way of kind of going about doing that you kind of combine, the market competitive and research, and then your point system. So you also, to finish that, you define each factor's decrease, grades, determine for each factor's a factor decrease points. Then you review job descriptions and job specifications and evaluate jobs. So it's a pretty straightforward sort of step-by-step kind of a process. You have to do the internal wage curve, make sure that you are internally consistent. So you have to curve it in a normal curve inside your organization so that there is some sort of consistency and internal equity. That's very, very important. And then after you've done your internal equity, you do your market analysis in terms of a salary survey externally, and then you draw that external curve. And typically your internal is a little bit lower and your external goes a little bit higher, and you adjust salaries based on that. And so that's how you compare and adjust current and market rates for jobs. Again, these steps go on: develop pay grades, establish rate ranges, address remaining jobs. So you have certain benchmarks, and you develop pay grades and pay ranges for those jobs. And then whatever jobs you have between those benchmark jobs, you kind of adjust those and figure out where do they go between benchmarks, so that you're not necessarily doing this for every single job. You're just doing benchmarks and then in between, because many corporations have so many different positions and different levels that it would be cumbersome to do all of them. And there's out of line rates sometimes. It's just kind of interesting when you start looking at it. It's difficult sometimes to determine these, and sometimes you have outliers, and sometimes you have jobs that kind of pop out and they are either paid lower than they should be paid because the way you've kind of analyzed it and the way they kind of fall within your system, or they are accidentally or because of the way you didn't anticipate. How could I explain this? It's sometimes very difficult to assign these points and determine what factors you compensate more. And so let's just say that if you accidentally give really, really high weight for like technology usage, let me just use an example of academia. Instructional designers in online universities use a lot of technology, but instructional designers are not, paid higher than faculty. So now if you put more weight to technology skills than decrease, for example, you could end up in a situation where you have those out of line rates, and you have outliers or certain positions that just don't fit into your system because your system works better for some positions than other positions, if that makes sense. So sometimes you have to make those corrections. You just have to look at those jobs and put it in perspective, and realize that your point system and your decrease and all of that percentages of wage, they may not work as well for every position, if that makes sense. So some positions end up being underpaid than some ended up paying, overpaid maybe. So it's a lot of work that goes into this. And so it may sound like, okay, well, you this is just something that big corporations do, right? Because there's so much work and so much sophistication to be able to put this together. So it is important to remember that these pay plans are as important for small firms as they are for large ones. I mentioned to you before, I worked for a small independent sports university as a provost, chief academic officer, and they, we didn't, before I came there, we didn't have really an official pay plan, and it was very chaotic. And I pushed the president to say, look, we need to take a different approach to that, and we were able to come up with a better system because we were wasting money. We were giving people, whatever coming in, whatever that circumstance was. And, sometimes people are able to ask for more because we had not other candidates and we were desperate in needing that person. So we gave them historically they were given a, higher pay rate, to start with than somebody else who was in the same position before that. And it was completely sort of chaotic and didn't have equity. So we had to fix it because we had turnover as a result of that. Because money was being wasted in some positions, and in other positions people left because the positions didn't have internal and external equity. So it is important to remember that this is not just for large companies. Also, many states require jobs when you post them in like LinkedIn or salary.com. Well, this job, not so much salary.com is a good way for you to do your market research for geographic differences. Sorry, not demographic, geographic differences in salaries. You can easily look at in salary.com. But when you post jobs to like LinkedIn or something like that, in some states like California, they are required to post salary ranges. And so if you didn't do your, work in designing your pay plan, and you post a job in Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever, and it's been in that site, the site will automatically assign it a pay grade based on what they think that job is worth. And you got to be careful with that, because now they put something out there without you knowing it. And then a person comes and applies for a job and they said, my understanding is that this job pays this and this much. And you're like, no, it doesn't pay that much. Well, that's because Indeed assigned automatically a pay scale. And so that is a sure way of losing that employee if you are not within that range. And then what happens is that your existing employees who are not within that range see that you are hiring somebody new, and they notice out there and say, wait a minute, you are hiring that person for a lower position than mine, and you're offering them more money. And then you end up trying to explain and say, no, it wasn't us, it was Indeed, assigned those ranges. Well, employees don't believe that. So there's a lot of problems that can occur as a result of that. I know I'm kind of speed talking now a little bit, so need to slow down here. So do you have any questions at this point? Anybody? I know this is difficult to understand by just listening to me yapping about it. You kind of have to read the text and look at examples. This makes sense only by looking at examples. Like, I showed a couple of examples here, but that's the only way to kind of, see it. And unfortunately, I don't have a good example of point scale, point system that would make sense in this PowerPoint presentation. But that's the best way of understanding point system as well. And you can Google that, Google, point system compensation planning, and you'll get some examples. And that makes it because, every company can create their own variation of these systems. There's no law that says you have to do it this way. So these are just illustrations of some examples what one could use, but there's no rule that it has to be exactly that way. there's many companies do things very differently. Executive pay is not typically calculated based on these traditional methods. It's a completely different ballgame. Executives usually get a base pay, typically pretty significant because they are market rate. Is it fair what CEOs get paid? That's not really the right question. Are they worth that? Well, yeah, you hire a CEO, pay them, $1 million, and they are able to, increase your profitability, X amount of money, then that $1 million is worth it. And you have to pay that $1 million because other corporations will pay that $1 million as well. So it is what it is. Companies cannot really, get away from paying executives because they're just, not paying executives similar salaries that market-wise other companies in the same industry are, because they would just, not be able to attract those executives. And the biggest demand in organizations is for executives and professional type of jobs. The unemployment that is existing in the United States, at least, is in lower end jobs, and higher end jobs, professional, executive rankings. There's demand. People in that level, they go and look for jobs, they get offers pretty quickly because there's just demand. So compensating executives, base pay, short-term incentive, long-term incentives, benefits and perks, they get pretty creative. Executives sometimes able to negotiate exit, amount. They, already in the beginning, they negotiate, when I leave the organization, you give me a payout. And, if I reach this and this profitability short term, you give me this bonus, long term, you give me this bonus. And so you think about Elon Musk, for example, he was able to determine his own pay, in Tesla, in a way that his pay was linked to the long-term incentives, and he became mega billionaire, overnight, because he hit that benchmark kind of incentive kicking. So now he's losing a lot of money. Mark Zuckerberg lost like 40% of his worth, his value in 1 year. So, things change for these executives as well. So professional employees, before you pay somebody professional level salaries, you have to ensure that that person actually qualifies as a professional under Fair Labor Standards Act. So professionals, attorneys, doctors, those type of jobs would be good examples. Professors are considered professionals. There's a certain, exemption, education exemption for professors, and so forth and so on. So people get paid certain amount based on that profession, that is established profession in a society, kind of a thing. And that's what professional means. And so it has to be legally defined and acceptable under FLSA. So yeah, I keep moving that screen when I was meant to move to other screen. So a lot of this payroll administration these days, if companies feel like they do not have the skills and capabilities of doing all of this, they can also, like I said, they can computerize it. They can purchase a software system developed by a vendor that makes this easier for them to do. That would be one good solution. Second way that they can do it is that they can outsource it. There are companies out there who they perform the human resource payroll functions for other companies. So you can hire them to do all of this for them. And sometimes that may be advisable, because you have to keep track of everybody's FLSA worker status, wage rate, dependents, benefits, overtime, tax status, and so on and so on. I mean, you have to compute each paycheck, then direct the actual printing of checks or direct deposit. It's all a time-consuming act. It's very kind of complicated, and you have to comply with many federal, state, and local wage hour and other laws. So, obviously, it may be sometimes better. And then there's W4s, W2s, at the end of the year, there's all kinds of different things, out there. So you may want to use a company like ADP or something like that, to use, to have them to handle your payroll. But yeah, I mean, all of those, interestingly, what I was going to say, that all of those wage rates, dependence, benefit over the tax, all of that stuff. I mean, it's so easy to make mistakes. And what's interesting about that is that people get sensitive about money. If you make a mistake in something else, it's easier, but you do not want to make a mistake in somebody's paycheck. That's something that people notice and they pay attention right away. And when you make a mistake in somebody's paycheck a couple of times, you lost trust. Now they're going to be looking at every single penny, and they're going to be, inspecting every single pay stub, because they get suspicious that you're trying to short them. So there's an old saying says, you do not mess with people's money. And it's true. Employers have to take this extremely seriously, because people do react, and people's livelihoods, depend on that paycheck. And if that doesn't get, handled in a timely fashion, and, the money doesn't hit the bank account like it's supposed to for all employees, there could be problems. So it's very, very important for this to be done professionally. So there are a lot of hot topics in compensation management. One is the competence-based pay. The fact of the matter is that job descriptions change. Everything in organizations changes very rapidly. So people have to acquire new competencies. They get new certifications. They get new, badges, training or whatever. And so once somebody acquires new competencies, good companies, they take those into account in their compensation. So, you get new certifications, you get more money, and so forth and so on. And, it's because you want to keep that person, and you want to recognize the professional advancement or the professional development. So, you want to make sure that you recognize it. So that's why that's kind of a issue these days, or something, practice, I guess. Well, oversight of executive pay is an other, issue as well, that is gotten a lot of attention, because some executives just get paid so much that it becomes really outrageous, and so it's difficult to justify some of that. So yeah, those are just some. Comparable word fraud banning, not so much an issue so much with that. But comparable word is kind of interesting. I mean, because you start thinking, what is something word comparably speaking, right? So I mentioned earlier, like plumbers and technicians, I mean electricians or something like that, get paid, pretty outrageous money in comparison to, like, for example, professors. Considering that professors had to go 20 plus years of education, they pay a lot of tuition, student loans or something like that. And so, relatively speaking, comparably worth of that, profession is relatively low compared to, like, some other professions. So, comparatively speaking, professors have to have very high level of knowledge compared to somebody in a corporations who make double amount of money than they do. So, it's those are sort of issues that in society we may, I guess, question and think about how fair they are. I already talked about competency-based pay, personal characteristics, knowledge, skills, personal behaviors. So yes, those are competencies. And so if somebody really, really excels in some of those categories, and they don't have to be like official certifications like that, although they typically are that way, because otherwise there is no really way of measuring that somebody achieved that skill or knowledge. But recognized person advancing in leadership skills, or sales abilities or excellent communication or something. So you can, whatever is important for that corporation in terms of mission and vision of that company, certain competencies become important. You kind of reward that, so that you're able to keep those people who have those competencies, because they are valuable for your organization. So range, depth, types of skills, knowledge rather than job title. And so, that's kind of a clever way of doing it, I think. So broadbanding would be when you look at, it's kind of a way of grading or ranking jobs that, you total amount of dollars that you would have a certain band over here that you have grades and evaluation points and wage rates, wage rates and dollars. You would have a band A, band B. So you slump all of those jobs and all of those grades into like a one general category, and you call that band. And so broadbanding, you have certain salary wages within those bands, and that's just combining jobs and making it easier to manage, I guess. It means collapsing salary grades into just a few wide levels or bands, each of which contain a relatively wide range of jobs or pay levels. So to me, this is very similar than what military does with grades. So it's just that slumping a lot into under same category, and you can use criteria like competencies as a way of kind of organizing those bands, and certain competencies, are band A and band B. Certain competencies are higher paid than other, So again, maybe simplifying the way of doing this. People get confused with their point system, or some other traditional methods. Well, pay cap, already mentioned. Well, right now it's basically maybe better than 75 cents. Maybe women make about 81 cents, towards every dollar. But still, women only make about 81% of what women make. I mean, other way around, women make 81% of what men make. And so education may be a way of like changing that. And it's interesting, by the way, because now more women go to college than men. So in the future, education is definitely going to start changing this. But the gaps still remain. There's medical doctors, for example. There are more medical doctors that are men, and there are more in specializations that pay more money than women. That's some of it is by choice. Women choose pediatrics more than brain surgery, for example, more than men. Why? I don't know. Historically, tradition, culture, whatever. But some of it is just because they are being, directed that way, or that's where the medical schools kind of choose, each candidate, so train them so to different programs. So there are a lot of different factors that can cause this. Me Too movement, pressures from investors, and other reasons are forcing this change. And so hopefully things are going to get better in the future. The executive pay, I mentioned that, government regulations, legislation, executive pay is so outrageously high in some cases. I mean, multiple millions of dollars, and that's the base pay, maybe a couple of million, and then you add everything else, and you come up like 30 million, 50 million in some cases. It's very, very large compensation plans for some top executives. So SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, is kind of going after that and saying it has to be fair. Dodd-Frank law and the Sarbanes-Oxley that came after Enron, when Enron did what they did, and they totally, destroyed public's trust on corporations. And so the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was passed to try to control some of these things. And shareholders are starting to, push corporations and saying fairness is fairness, and you have to make things a little bit more equitable. So how we do it with time? So again, because of my little bit of a cold, I think I probably speed talk a little bit today. So let me just ask you again if anybody has any questions at this point. I know this gets kind of a complex, or maybe not that much, but it gets after 2 hours, it's difficult for anybody to listen. So any questions at this point? So total rewards, when you think about, like I said earlier, it's not just about money. When people ask me if they should take a certain job offer, I tell them that think about a couple of things. You take a job because money is really, really good. That you can't turn it down because job is really, really good. Money is really, really good. I mean, at the time when you're accepting the job, you don't really know about the culture and a lot of those things, if you're really going to enjoy it or not. So you have to kind of guess. But at that point, you have to determine it, money is so good that you can't say no, or there is training opportunities and advancement opportunities and professional development opportunities that are so significant that you can't say no. So it's an opportunity for you to grow. So total rewards also sort of encompasses the professional growth opportunities and motivating work environment that will escalate you, elevate you in your career progression. So maybe the money is not that good in that position, but because of the training that you achieve in that position, you're able to get to the next career, step faster. So really, when we look at our compensation, we really should look at the just the total rewards and the total reward programs and how that company kind of supports you as a human being and your totality. And good companies are able to do that. And sometimes, the actually base compensation is not as good as the total package that you look at. So many of the best companies to work for that are ranked every year, they emphasize intangible rewards. Google is always thought as being one of the best places to work for. The restaurants, the Googleplex, the great work environment is really big factor. It's not the pay, it's all of those perks that you get with it that really count so much towards, because all have monetary value. And in the end, people choose those better than they would choose, just the base money. So something to look at if you are considering a work offer, somebody's giving you a job offer, consider their geographics, location, make sure that you do a salary comparison, what that amount of money would be worth in where you live, and consider that, and consider training opportunities, total rewards before you make that decision. Sorry. Recognition rewards, also, does the company, recognize you for extra hours worked, for extra effort putting in, all of those types of things is something that also is important to make sure that you take into consideration when you choose your job. Okay, sorry again, maybe a little speed talking here, but not feeling too good today. So I hope that you got at least something out of today's session. Like I said, I'm going to start creating all of the post-it assignment. I was going to do it last week, but I had to go to a business trip to Louisiana, and I just didn't get an opportunity in a hotel room to keep up with everything. So I apologize. Because I mentioned that week ago that I will start creating those assignments. So I will do that as soon as possible, and we will have one more quiz, and then you have the final project case study that I've posted. So those are only remaining 2 gradable assignments, if that makes sense. So Any questions? Everybody good? You all okay? Everybody still awake?
So Tomi, there's
Thank you.
another case study again.
Huh? Sorry?
There's another case study again.
Well, it's the one as let me see here in a course, what order they were. No, there's a course paper and then there is a case study. So the first assignment is a course paper and then there's a second assignment is case study. And the course paper, 16 has submitted. Case study, only one person has submitted so far, and there are 31 students in a class. So really half of you still have to submit that course paper, and that's writing a research paper on a topic of human resources of the future. So that's really a visioning exercise of looking at what are factors that are going to be changing human resources, turning it more strategic, important role of human resources information systems. You can talk about these compensation trends, competency-based pay, executive pay, all of that we talked about today would be good examples as well. Should be approximately 10 pages, APA formatted, which is double spaced, so it doesn't actually 10 pages is not that many when you think that it's double spaced. You should have at least 4 references, peer-reviewed quality references preferably. Don't just use anything you find in the internet. Using quality sources from libraries would be preferable, but try to find as good quality references as you can. If you have any questions about how to find them, reach out to me and I'll help you to understand how to identify quality academic references. Also, if you have any difficulties with APA formatting style, use apastyle.org website that is from American Psychological Association. You can download templates and stuff from there. You can also go to Purdue University OWL online writing lab. It's called OWL. Purdue OWL is a very, very good source that you can easily Google on APA formatting. You can also Google quality academic references, and there are many, many universities that have sites that explain, what are quality academic references. So this is a typical research paper, which means that everything has to be supported and listed references and cited in text. Now the case study is very different. Case study, you go back to your textbook and you choose one of the, actually I need to correct the typo out there, but anyway, I'll change it right now. You have to choose the case study from the end of the book. There is I don't remember, 3 case studies, I think. And so each of those case studies, there's questions at the end of the case study. So you simply read the case, you think about it, and you answer your those questions on the case. You support them with academic quality references where suitable. If they are suitable, if you feel like you need to support your opinion. Make sense?
Okay.
And the quiz that I'm going to post is going to be exactly the same as the previous quiz. Small essay questions, take home. I don't believe in the online multiple choice timed exams. Reason I don't do those is because people's internet connection is fluctuating and there's no way of knowing, who is able to finish it on time. Sometimes internet connection times out. There's a lot of technical problems, so I'm trying to take into consideration that you are international students and give you the time to do it off screen and then submit it.
That's why we like you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Because I just, it's just understand that, there's wide variety. I mean, I live over here in Alabama and my internet connection isn't as good as it was when I lived in Chicago because this is a beach community. I mean, there's no infrastructure like that over here. And so, it's you can never trust it. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions about those assignments, let me know. And please, if you haven't submitted, go ahead and submit because we definitely want to make sure that everybody gets them. In quiz 1, the first quiz, 20 people have submitted. There's 4 that I need to grade, and so there is still a handful of you that have not submitted that. So I have to base your grade on these assignments. So if you don't do them, I can't give you the points. And so that's the way evaluation goes. I have to assess your learning. So I don't want to be, I don't want to, fail anybody. So please go out there and do those assignments and read the book, because you can't do the assignments without reading the book. Okay?
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. And again,
Thank you so much.
sorry for my being sick a little bit, but
Thank you.
I'll see you next week. And happy Thanksgiving, if you celebrate it next week. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Professor. Bye.